Welcome back to Our Last Meal, Season 2, Episode 1. I took the month of October off and re-released some old episodes that I've always really liked, and I hope you enjoyed them too. I am getting back into the swing of things now, starting in November with a new episode about me and about my grandmother, who I talk about in the first episode ever of this show. In case you haven't listened to that one or don't remember, I talk about my grandmother several years ago getting sick and just general concern for her health. At the end of that episode, what I discuss is the fact that my grandmother had not passed away, but my grandfather had. My grandmother did pass away around Christmas time, just after Christmas time last year, December 2022. It took a long time for me to feel comfortable talking about it, or able to talk about it, I guess. It was hard to record this episode in some ways. I had Devin, who has been on the show before and who I consider a friend, and he came on and talked to me, and he was a great guest host to kind of fill my normal role, and I am appreciative of that. But it was kind of hard to talk about my grandmother, just because I still miss her and it still hurts. That being said, though, I am really thankful to have a chance to have been able to speak about her. She was an amazing woman, and I loved her, and I still love her. And I guess if nothing else, this is going to be kind of a lasting testimony to that. And that sounds really corny and cheesy to say, but it's the truth. I didn't talk about this in the episode, but just one thing I'll throw out up front to keep in theme with the show. And this is going to be kind of a downer right at the beginning, so I apologize in advance. But I hope it doesn't shy you away from the rest of the episode, because I really did enjoy getting to talk about her, laugh, about her, and just remember her fondly. But to keep in theme with the show of Our Last Meals, as the last meal I had with my grandmother was in the hospital back in 2022. I'd gone to visit her, and I'd taken my mom so that she could see her, because we were really concerned that this was going to be the last time we would get to see her. She was in there. She had good days and bad days, and this was kind of an in-the-middle day. She didn't remember me, but she knew that I was family. She knew I loved her. She loved me. If you've ever had anyone with Alzheimer's or dementia, anything like that, then you'll probably know what I'm talking about whenever I say that. She wasn't given a lot of food, or at least a lot of solid food. It's hospital diets are But I remember she had a cup of Jell-O, and I remember I was helping her with it and feeding her. And at some point, during the day, I was just talking to her, and I talked to her about the food that I used to eat with her growing up. Just, things that she would make me and my cousins. And I just remember her looking at me and smiling, and she just put her hand on me, and she just said, "You'll always be one of my boys." And it really hit me. And it still hits me now when I think about it. So I guess my last meal with my grandmother was getting to feed her Jell-O, getting to talk with her about the food she used to make me. And I'm thankful for that. And I wish I could see her again. I love her and I miss her. I am really happy, though, that I get to talk about her today. So I hope you will enjoy it. I'm excited for a new season. And let me just go and throw it over to the episode. Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal. I'm your host, Andrew, and I'm going to break with tradition a little bit today. And instead of me introducing who I'll be interviewing, I'm going to introduce special guest host this week, friend of the show, been on a couple times now, somebody I will say I consider a friend now, and I met through podcasting, Devin. Devin, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, is a great friend, Andrew. And yes, I've been on a couple times. You can listen to the episodes going back. And yeah, like I said, I wish I could have stole this concept. I love it. I love talking about just the connection of food, family, and importance. It's amazing. And I get to host it. So I almost get to live that dream a little bit. That's what I'm feeling right now. Is that like, oh, I kind of took it over. All right, here we go. So yeah, but no, man, like I said, I enjoy coming on, and yeah, I lately food wise, okay, this is a personal story. By the time I tip, and by the time I get through ordering what I'm like, ooh, I want to try that and this and this and this and that, I look at the end of that bill, and I don't know if a tear would do it. I really don't. I think even multiple tears, it wouldn't really do it. But at the same time, my brain is actively like, yeah, but it was worth it, right? Like, it was worth it, right? And I'm like, and I will say, I don't want to be the old fogey that's like, everywhere's asking for tipping. Like, no, some of these people deserve tips, right? Especially if they're doing like the service part of it, right? I heard about the self-checkout thing where people are getting asked if they want to tip at a self-checkout. I was like, oh, that is insulting. But are
we tipping the robot, or does it then just, are we just getting change back? If I'm doing self-service and I tip, I want the money.
Yeah,
that's called cash back.
Yeah, that's cash back.
That's all that
Why
is.
are they doing cash back with us? We're like, we know what this is. They're like, well, there's a $2 processing fee. We're like, self-checkout? I am sick of this. I'm going back to people. They're like, you can't go back to people. We don't have
the people.
We don't have the people anymore. And you're like, oh, man. But no, I mean, that's been my food thing as of late, is I love everything that I'm eating. And the food's amazing. The people who are serving it are brilliant. I always leave a note that I'm like, thank you for like giving me a date night with my wife, and I can remember how awesome this meal was. But then I look at that price again, and I'm just like, I'm like, I remember when it wasn't this high. Am I old, or is it just new? I don't know what's going on. And yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's like, I went out to eat with my wife and my daughter last night, and it wasn't anything. We didn't eat anything crazy. And it wasn't anywhere fancy, but yeah, that bill was more than I expected. And I even I got a cup of French onion soup, which I haven't had in a while. And I saw it. I was like, that sounds good. And then I got a wedge salad.
Yeah.
Love a wedge salad.
Oh, yeah. Classic. Yeah.
That's I've learned as I've gotten older. I've got very and I don't know if it's getting older or being a dad, but I've got older man taste buds now.
Right.
Okay.
New Balance 4500 taste buds. That's what you've got.
100%. It. Give me a wedge salad. Give me a hard boiled egg. I made egg salad last week. I never ate egg salad as a kid. Sounds disgusting, but I was like, I want egg salad. I want an egg salad sandwich. That's an old person thing to do, and that's what I did.
Old fogey person thing to do again. You mentioned the egg salad. My morning, the past like couple mornings, one, I got to give a shout out to Great Value home style waffles. Okay. They're frozen home style waffle. Better than Eggo. I'm saying it. Better than Eggo.
Bold statement.
That is a bold statement. I'm telling you, they're great. And so I put 2 in my little toaster. I got the 4 slaughter. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Bougie.
I'm living that large. Yeah, I'm bougie. Very bougie. Good luck, Cardi Bois. Yeah, so it's one of those things where I go fancy with it, but I put my 2, waffles in there, And then inevitably, one Morningstar buffalo chicken patty,
Oh, that sounds
right? The
good.
chick patty. Yeah, so that's the first thing. You got to do that. It's only like 100 and something calories, so I'm like, yeah, I'm being healthy. Woo! And it's a little bit spicy. I love the spice. So it's like, okay. And then, of course, like a typical New Balance 4500 taste bud, I'm like, American cheese. And I throw that on there, and I'm like, yeah, melted good American cheese. And then I have that on there. But the Just Egg folded eggs, those are really good. Those are good.
Okay.
I like them. They are a good alternative. I'll be the first one to admit that. Are they as good as buttery, like fresh cooked out of a pan eggs? No. But they're going to work in a pinch. You microwave it for like, I think it's like a minute and 15 seconds. I can't remember. But you can use those. Or you do what I do, which is you get the QP mayo out. You pull out the hard-boiled eggs. You start slicing them and dicing them to where it's a fine chop. And you make a little bit of an egg salad out of that, right? You add whatever salt-free seasonings you're using, you know, God something, Flavor God, I can't remember what it is. But yeah, there's that. There's, you know, but I have Spice House. Once again, I'm bougie. Spice House, I pull out, you know, my kimchi seasoning, pull out my Cajun seasoning. I'm like, and I add that all in there. I mash the hard-boiled egg part with the mayo, and then I've got all my white egg pieces sticking out everywhere. You put it in the waffle, and it's like whatever sauce you put in there, it still makes it flat.
Huh.
Yeah, it goes into the crevices. So it doesn't make your sandwich all wobbly uneven, right?
Makes sense.
Then I've got my flat buffalo chick patty with my melty cheese in between two toasted waffles. Dude,
That sounds amazing.
it's a waffle sandwich that I created one day because I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And now it's become a usual thing. And I don't know. It's like I have stock in Walmart maybe, and that's something that I gotta, you know, I'm like, hey, great value, blah, 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 sponsor. And it's like, no, it's
good. It's
home
good.
style waffles. Yeah. Yeah, you can put sausage on there. Who cares? You can put maple syrup on those things. There's no holes. They've already perfectly cooked you a waffle, right?
So
you just throw it in the toaster.
you know, I like this though. This idea of, and I've done this before, when you just get an idea in your head and you say, this is going to taste good. I can't justify it, but it's going to taste good. I've been doing low carb for a couple months now, and I've lost weight doing it. You know, been exercising a lot. And so, but
You're looking good.
I appreciate it.
You're
man.
looking
You know,
good.
It's just the camera. But I'll take
Oh
it.
well, yeah.
But
I was like, you got a new
it's a
camera
filter.
too.
This is all a filter.
It's a filter.
I actually look worse than I did before,
Yeah.
but I got a really good filter.
I got a really good filter.
But I make these low carb cheesecake muffins, which is, it's really, the crust is just almond flour and butter. The filling is stevia, cream cheese, a little bit of vanilla extract, and egg. And then the original recipe I found included some pumpkin, but I have added baking powder or baking cocoa powder to it, and it comes out real chocolatey. The other day, though, I saw something on TikTok, and it was some girl. She made a cinnamon cream cheese sandwich. So this is an audio medium. I need to remember that. So Devin's eyes got wide there, but I saw that, and I was like, why have I never thought about this?
Yeah.
So I made these cinnamon cheesecake low carb muffins the other day, and I told my wife,
That's dangerous, man.
oh god, they're good. And I told my wife, I was like, in my head, I knew this would be good. I did not know it would be that good. That is exactly what I wanted it to be. So that's my new addiction.
That's like, that it's one of those recipe things. Like you were saying, you're like, I know this is going to be good, and this is going into the rotation. Like, it's like, every time I make these, I'm basically trying to mimic this. Like, that's what I'm trying to do.
Chasing that dragon.
Right. It's like McGuire, right? He just got addicted to home runs. You don't want to get a double ever again. It's like home runs are sick.
I think it was steroids, though. I think he got addicted to steroids.
Right. Yeah, the needles and stuff. I think that helped. But yeah. But no, I mean, it's like you were saying. That's like the new thing is figuring out Like, how can I fit this into a diet, still make it good, and be excited to like make it and have it? Which is not what our forefathers were really thinking when they made poutine and biscuits and gravy and
as many
all that
calories in a
stuff.
handful as I can get.
Right. They're like, oh yeah, I've got to go do literally everything by hand. Let me go do that. But before I leave, let me eat this whole stack of flapjacks, 2 things of sausage, and about half a carton of eggs. I'll be good to go.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, okay. Like that's a bold move, Cotton. Like that's where it gets to. It's like, man, I don't know how you're gonna make it. And it's like, oh, my heart will allow me to make it. It's like, okay,
Eat 6,000 calories today, but I'm going to burn them all off.
Right? Yeah, milking cows, doing field stuff. Yeah, whatever they did, that's the thing is like now I literally look back at like, I got farmers in my family and they did all that kind of stuff. But I always look at it as like, it's like gardening, but bigger. That's what I think in my head. But then I'm like, no, they had to use like harvesters and like big tractors and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. Like there had to have been maintenance with that. You're doing oil changes on a John Deere.
Yeah.
Like there's other stuff you have to be pretty knowledgeable about. But then my little dum-dum comes in there and goes, it's like gardening, but bigger. It's like, oh man. But anyway, the main thing is that when I was a little dum-dum, you were probably a little, I'll just say dumb. And then you had some intelligence with it, and you were hanging out with the person that we were talking about just before this, and now we will talk about again. Your grandmother.
Yeah.
What was your grandmother's name?
So her name was Ruby. She was my Grandma Justice, and that was her last name. She wasn't like a grandma superhero because Grandma Justice sounds like I know what that sounds like. That sounds like.
Yeah,
an old woman who saw
Marvel.
Yeah, she stops crying and she gives you caramels. But
literally, I could hear in my head the theme music to like old Batman, like they're like Ruby Justice, and it's like like I can imagine that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a good name. That is a very good name.
It was,
and it's a good grandma name, Ruby.
Yeah,
that's yeah. But yeah, what was she like? Was she very bubbly? Was she very down to earth? Was she quiet, loud?
She wasn't loud. She was the matriarch, but she wasn't she wasn't imposing, if that makes sense. Like that.
Yeah.
We all loved and respected her very much. But it was never that I'm intimidated by her when I was a kid. None of us were intimidated by her. We all respected her. We knew not to act up. Because she would, she'd discipline as she needed, but, she was just a sweet lady. I saw her smiling more than just about anybody else in my life probably growing up. She loved her family, loved being around her family.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, I think when most kids look back at their grandparents, the intimidation factor is momentary, right? It's like connected to certain moments, but overall, it's like the grandparents get the great reviews in therapy, right? Your parents are the ones that are going to get really bad reviews, but your grandparents, you're like, oh yeah, my grandma, she was pretty awesome. Like she was always smiling. She was so happy. She'd give me food all the time. I mean, I liked it. It was pretty great. Yeah. But no, I mean, like, so before we dive into the food type stuff, what was something that she was like Queen Ruby of? Was it a particular sport that she played in her younger days? Was it like beating your butt at Connect Four, or like you try to play Uno and she always had the Uno reverse card? Like what type of things was she Queen Ruby?
So never any sports, she never really brought that up. I do remember certain things from going to her house as a kid. The most athletic thing I ever saw her do was she had an exercise bike, and one of those old school fan bikes.
Yeah, it spins.
Yeah, it makes a ton of noise. So she had one of those growing up.
Yeah.
She was also like one of my favorite things I did with her as a kid was puzzles. So anytime I'd go to anytime I went to her house, she always had a puzzle she was working on. I would, after we moved away from my extended family when I was a kid, my immediate family, we got transferred because of my dad's job. Whenever I would come and visit, I would always spend over the summer, I'd always spend at least a week or two with her. I'd get to, see her, see my cousins. I would always get there and she'd say, hey, I bought a couple puzzles for us to do while you're here. And, some of my fondest memories when I was a kid is just at night, once all my cousins, going back to their house, because, sometimes they'd spend the night, and I can, in hindsight, I can see why she wouldn't want, 4 or 5 boys aged, 10 to 12 all in the house. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also
it's like having a herd of like buffalo run through your house, not only in just the feet, just thundering herd, but also the eating
and the smell.
Like
let's be honest.
You're close to and the smell. Yeah. Yeah. I was a smelly kid during that time. 10 to 12. Yeah. You don't know how bad you smell.
No, kids.
You think you're doing fine, and it's like, dude,
you're ripe.
You are rank. Yeah, you're rank. Like, what do you think you smell like? Well, I've been outside all day. No, you smell like manure. How did this happen?
You smell like, you smell like BO ate manure and then tried to cover it with Axe body spray. It is not good. It is not working for you.
It's not good. It's not working. Yeah. Let me guess. You washed your hands with like that vanilla lavender soap and you think you're fine. You're not.
I washed my hands last week. Fine. I'm clean.
Yeah, I'm good. Good to go.
But
yeah, so yeah, having none of the herd of children, she's got you now, right?
So,
and the puzzles.
So yeah, I remember it was something I always looked forward to. I always looked forward to this when I was a kid. Was I knew that there'd be at some point during that time I was spending with her that in the evening time, after dinner, after everybody going home, me and her would just be sitting at the kitchen table, just working on a puzzle together, and we'd get a chance to talk, and it was just, I don't even remember the specifics of conversations as I think back on it. It's one of those that you may not remember what people said, but you'll remember how they made you feel. And she just always made me feel special. I mean, that's the only way I can explain it,
Yeah.
She taught me how to put puzzles together the right way of, doing the border first and then filling.
Yep.
My daughter's 7. I taught her to put puzzles together the same way, and it wasn't a I'm going to sit down and teach her the way, Grandma taught me, but at some point it's like, you do this. You always start with a border, then you fill the way in. And it just kind of clicked one day whenever I was doing it.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the whole thing it's like, I think that's the like nuggets of wisdom that they always tell you. That's why you need like elders around, not just your parents' elders, but like older, because it's like, there's just certain things that they do it a certain way, and your parents were like, I'm never going to do it that way. I'm not going to do it that way. And you think in your head, like, oh, yeah, my dad or my mom, they really know how to do this or that. And then grandma starts doing a puzzle, and you're like, Dad's an idiot. like, grandma's really got this down. Like, oh, my God. And it's like, she did the borders already? Oh, my God. Like, yeah.
She's got a
so
plan.
it's, right, exactly. She's coming at this with strategy. Like, how'd that happen? Like, what, But yeah, that happens all the time. And that's the thing. I remember I did puzzles with my grandparents and everything. And my brother, every birthday, he does a puzzle on his own. He tries to do a puzzle and stuff like that. And it's always interesting because my grandma, for a while, her thing was like the piece amount. Right?
Yeah.
So 1,000, then 1,500, then, whatever. Then it was like she went through this phase of like, it's got to be above 1,000, but it's got to be like a herd of kittens or a field of sunflowers. Like, it's got to be difficult, like really hard. So it was like, because I think she noticed that the higher piece count she went to, it was like the easier the image was. So she could kind of like piece it. So she was like, "Nah, give me a whole field of petunias. That's what I want. You bring that puzzle in here, I'll kick its ass. Like I'll put it all together." And I'm just like, "Granny, please, You're scaring all the other puzzles away. Like, we'll get it to you soon. She's like, until then, I'll be doing my crossword puzzles. It's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I didn't know she had such a raspy voice. Oh my. Yeah.
She sounded so sweet a second ago. Now she sounds like she just got back from Nam.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When did she become a biker gang like member? I didn't know. I didn't know that. They're like, oh yeah, Granny, she's got tats all up and down, dude. Yeah. Granny's going to the tattoo parlor next week.
Yeah, she's got a giant piece that says only God can judge me on her back, man. I wouldn't mess with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do anything. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever seen her get mad at the mail guy? Watch out. Watch out.
I got to tell. So that reminds me one I've got to tell. And I have some family that listens to this, and if you hear this and you don't like that I told this, I'm sorry, but I got to tell it anyway. My grandmother, I mentioned she was such an incredibly sweet woman. She wasn't timid. I wouldn't say she was timid. I've seen her when I was a kid. You know, my brother getting in trouble with some kids, some other boys in the neighborhood where they, I think it was a couple of them jumped him. I remember her. She was 5'1", 100 pounds sopping wet. She was a very small woman, right? She would put the fear of God in you when she needed to. When she needed to kick that on, I remember her. I remember her chewing out some boys down the street from her house, for doing something. But what I remember too was my brother when he was older. He was about 16. So you're 16. You've
right.
You got your pure adrenaline, pure testosterone.
Yeah, you got swagger.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I wouldn't say swagger.
I would say it's a fake swagger.
It's an attempted swagger.
Right. You're like confident, but it's like, I don't think I got this all the way. Like, I think I'm winging this really badly, but you're like, I'm gonna think that I'm cool though. Like, and you try to finish it, But yeah.
I remember him at about 16 years old, and I would have been I don't know. I would have been maybe between 8 and 10. He was around like 16 to 18, somewhere in there. He did something. I don't know what he did, but whatever he did, he was not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, and she wanted to make sure he understood that he was not supposed to do that. So she was from the old school of spanking was okay. I think I maybe got spanked by her once when I was a kid and realized that was enough. I didn't need any more of that. So I behaved for her.
Right.
But I remember her having my brother, who is got a good 60 pounds on her, several inches, by the back of his shirt, and a yellow plastic shovel in her other hand, and just whooped him across the backyard. And I want to understand. I want to make sure this is clear for anyone who listens to this, because there are people that know me in real life. My grandmother was not a bad woman. So when you hear this, don't think that this was abuse. He had it coming. If anything, he should have gotten more of these. Right. But she spanked. She broke a plastic shovel, and he was actively trying to get away from her. This wasn't I'm going to take this. This was I am terrified of this little woman, and I want to get away.
Right.
And me and two of my cousins who were around the same age, we were all standing at the back in their backyard at the tree line, watching this and just enjoying the scene. And
I just loving every moment of it.
Yeah.
You're like, I know he did wrong, and I'm gonna love watching this. Like, this is gonna be great.
But in the span of within an hour, probably, she went from doing this to serving dinner to her entire family, because she was also that house that people would just stop by, and it was never just I'm just gonna make enough dinner for her her and my grandfather. It was like she's gonna make a big meal, and people are just gonna come by.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is when they come by, they're doing the like Law and Order, NCIS type of thing. Like, they look at the area where your brother was actively trying to run away, and they're like, there was a struggle. Like, there was something has occurred since we have dropped off these children. And then they come in and they see your brother, and they're like, where's that yellow shovel? Where did that go? And your grandma's like, I had to break that. I had to get rid of that thing. That
would have been great to see her turn into a mob boss. I never saw a shovel.
Yeah. What shovel you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. Shovels. We're here to eat, not talk about shovels. Come on. Sit at the table. Don't put your elbows on it. It's just, it turns into it's like, all right, yeah, all right, we're all gonna be here, you know. Are you guys already bowing your heads? Yep, we're ready. Like, that's yeah. But no, I totally get it. Like you were saying, matriarch. Like, it's like, no, you got to stop by. You got to see what's going on. You got to ask if you can help in any way. You got to, it's like one of those things where, and it's like you're saying, it's not like an intimidation thing. It's like, no, I got to check in.
Yeah.
I got to see what's going on.
She was well respected. And she was beloved, man. She really was.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like, especially with like kids running around and everything. Yeah. You have to be a spry grandparent, period, if you've got kids running around. Because like you were saying, that it's inevitable that they're going to do a small or large thing that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right. And as the grandparent, you're like, I can spoil these kids, but I can't make them like little a-holes running around here. Like, they have to grow up to be good people because I screwed up on my kids. But these grandkids,
gotta do right by
they're
them.
going to be so good.
Yeah.
They're going to be such great kids. And it's, I mean, and that's kind of how it goes. It's like, that's, so you got to be spry. You got to know what's going on. You got to be looking around. And and that's how yellow shovels get broken.
I mean,
is because, your brother can't freaking follow the rules.
look, he's in his 40s now. I guarantee you he remembers that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, I
bet he does. He's like Fisher Price. Yeah. This is an 18-inch yellow shovel.
Oh, God.
He's like, yeah. I tried to run. It was about 100 yards. She got me very quickly. Commenced to swat my behind. It was about 15 strikes. And, the thing broke. Broke right in two. It's like, you really relived that. Did you tell your therapist about it? No, I don't talk about that to my therapist. No.
Bottle that one up.
That's right. That's between me and me, Mom. That's not a thing that I talk about out loud very often. No. That's it's it's the way it goes. I still remember when I was growing up, like my grandma, she was inevitable to be like, my grandpa would take me and my brother out to, whether it was the garden, the farm, whatever. And she was like in the kitchen window or the back, like, what do they call it? Patio, and kind of standing there and watching. 'Cause she was like, the second he turns around, these kids are going to do something stupid. Like they're going to try to turn the lawnmower on, or they're going to be like, I know how to pick corn. And they're just going to snap the whole stalk off. Like, they're going to do something dumb. And inevitably one of us would be like, I'm going to do something funny. And we would try to like go do something. And my grandma, you'd hear it, the echo through the valley of just like, David, get off that hay bale. And I'm like, oh, man. Like, of course. And I turn around. She's on the patio, like, looking down. It's like, yep, that's the end of that fun.
Yeah.
But inevitably, it's like if I would have gotten on that hay bale, I would have, like, gone in over end. Yeah, or a brown recluse or a black widow comes up and bites me, and I'm like, something hurt. And my grandpa's like, oh, it's probably just a piece of wire. It's fine. And it's like, no, it was like an animal. It felt like it bit me. Yeah, they all feel it. It's probably a bee sting. You're fine. Wait, are you allergic to bees? Like, it's like one of those things, Yeah. But yeah, no. So Grandma Ruby here, she knew how to lay down the law.
Yeah.
She was subdued, but was very good at making, sure that everybody got their individual time.
Yeah.
Right? Like they got their thing. 'Cause like you're saying, you get to feel special when you're going through those things, 'cause you realize that it's like, yeah, she could be doing a million other things, but she's doing this thing with me now. And she's actively engaged. She's going through everything with me. Yeah. That's like grandma, grandpa 101.
Yeah.
Like that's what everybody hopes for in a grandparent.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I consider myself lucky to have, that she was my grandmother. I mean, she was just an incredible woman.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and that brings me to the next thing, which is the incredible food. What is the item, the meal, the thing that you were like, this is Ruby Justice.
So
this is the thing.
I have a few, and you know, I talk about
yeah.
this in the very first episode of this podcast. I talk a little bit about some of the food that was always at her house. You know, I said then the the Little Debbie donut sticks.
Yeah, the donut sticks.
And
donuts. Oh man,
she always had.
Yeah.
So Grandma Justice. She was really cool. She was diabetic. She was diabetic for decades.
Ah.
She lived to be 90 years old.
Whoa, and she was diabetic.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
And again, rail thin. But I don't know. She was so good about making sure that she watched her blood sugar. I remember seeing her as a kid, checking her blood sugar and just thinking like, oh my God, she's just pricking her finger. This woman, she's a BAMF. But she always made sure that there were snack cakes in the house for the kids. She always made sure there's a little treat for us. And the one I remember is these Little Debbie snack cakes. And even now, I will see these sometimes at a gas station, and it's like it hits me on a day that I needed it. So, earlier this year, after her passing, there's a gas station by my house, and I'd gone over there to just grab a soda or something, and while I'm there, I just see this older woman who was kind of, she just looked a little confused and just, she was just trying to figure out what she wanted to do. So I tried to help her real quick. So I helped her get her drink, that she was wanting. And while I'm standing in line to pay, I'm looking at this older woman who reminds me of my grandmother. I'm thinking about her, and I look over. They have one of those little stands of just different kinds of snacks and stuff right there in the middle of the aisle, and I see these donut sticks, and I'm just kind of felt like that little. You don't realize sometimes that you need a snack cake how bad you do,
Oh yeah.
So I grabbed those, and
it means a whole lot more than just a snack cake.
Yeah.
Like it's got more weight to it than just the flour and sugar that went into it.
Yeah, because I don't even like the taste of them that much. They're too sweet. But that night, I got home from the gas station, and I handed my wife, her soda, and she saw those, and she didn't say anything, but she looked at me. She knew what that meant to me, what those meant to me, and I really needed them that night. I also, I think about food she cooked. I know beef stew was a big one that she would make, and she made it just perfect. But my favorite thing she made, and it is the simplest thing, and it is a thing I have tried to recreate, but I will never get it as right as hers, is cornbread. Fried cornbread, hoe cakes. She just had a cast iron pan that was just seasoned just right, and she knew how to make them. And I have never in my life had cornbread better than that.
So who got the pan after she had passed?
I'm not sure. Some of her belongings.
You got to figure out where that pan went. Because I'm telling you, she may not have. She told you the exact recipe. She told you how to do it. She's like, kid doesn't know it's the pan.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, she tried to explain it to me once a couple years before she passed, and if you ever want something to just drive you, just nutty, ask your grandmother how to cook a thing that she just cooks to perfection. Because all it is, well, you just do a little bit of this and a little bit of this and make sure it looks right.
Yeah. No measurements. No time. No, not even like product names.
No.
Like, she's like, oh yeah, you lather up the pan, and you're like, what is lather? What is that? Is that Crisco? Is it butter? Like, what is it? You can use wherever you want. I'm like, no. This is specific. Is this an oil? A fat? Like, what is this? Well, this. And she just grabs a thing, and it's in like a Ziploc bag. And you're like, what the heck? Like, this doesn't, it's not Ziploc brand oil. Like, I know that. Like, but yeah, I hear you. It's a crazy time.
Yeah.
It's like it's like you feel like you're figuring out the Magna Carta again.
Yeah. And, well, what's crazy too is that that's my meal that I remember for her. But, I've talked with other people in my family, and they all had different meals. So my sister, hers was this chicken and rice that my grandmother made. And I know that sounds simple, but she explained it to me that she would boil the chicken and she'd then pull off the bones and then she'd use that water, she'd add in the rice and she'd season it real simple. She'd shred the chicken and she'd mix it all together. And I remember eating that. But to my sister, that's the thing that if she ever gets
Creme
that
de la
again.
creme.
Yeah. My aunt, I visited her earlier this year, not long after she had passed. And we were just kind of reminiscing a little bit, and she'd found my grandmother's cookbooks, and I have a couple of her cookbooks in my office at home, and when I was looking through them, I actually found some handwriting of hers in there where she'd marked recipes and this isn't like mastering the art of French cooking. It's not that. This is the McLeansville Baptist Women's cookbook of 1984. It's that.
Right.
It's
in a binder.
Right. That's
it's
there's literally and again, audio medium. There's literally binder on this. This is but it's there's something so amazing that I got to look at a cookbook that she at some point referenced. And even there is ham and cheese sliders. I think is the thing that stood out to me because I'm just, I could go to TikTok right now and find 400 recipes for ham and cheese sliders, but there was one that my grandmother saw, and she said, "I want to remember that one."
And that's the thing I think we do take for granted with a lot of this stuff is like back then it was like, no, I have to talk to like 50 people in this congregation, get them to write it down. Do all of that because even if you had a camera, you weren't really right. You're not really allowed to write out the recipe on the back or on the front for that matter. Like and it's like I think nowadays with food and media and how you can figure out recipes. Oh my gosh! Like if we went back to, I would say as early as like the 80s.
Yeah.
I think even people in the 80s would be like, oh my gosh, you have no idea how easy you've got it, let alone going back to, 40s, 30s, or even beyond. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's like, these are the things like, I'll keep this for the rest of my life. I mean, this is something, that I'll show my grandkids one day that, your great grandmother, this is recipes that she used to look at. When I was talking with my aunt though, she had told me that her favorite thing that my grandmother made was weenie soup. And I know how that might sound silly. But, I'll call something out. My grandmother was born in the 1930s. So she was born in the Depression. She raised 6 children. She understood the concept of you need to stretch everything. If hot dogs are how you get protein in the meal, that's how you get protein in the meal. And she would make this soup, and my aunt just loved it. And it was also how there was a bittersweet memory tied to it. So for her, it's that recipe, that comfort thing that nobody makes this like grandma. It's that thing that she'll never be able to make it just the same way.
Yep.
But she'd asked my grandmother one day, could you make that because I'm really craving it? My grandmother said yeah, and I don't know if it was dementia or Alzheimer's, but towards the end, that was setting in, and it did impact. It impacted everyone. Her because she was living it, than everyone else because you're seeing it front row and it's hard. That was her first I think real inclination that she knew that something was really wrong because she talked to her a couple hours later and she said, "Now what was it you said you wanted me to make?" And she reminded her because it's nothing, But then it was, okay, well, how do I make that one again? And just when she told me that, it broke my heart. It's because it's not just your mom's mind starting to go. That's a big part of I talk about food on this show as something that is really important and is more than just I need to eat dinner, but it's really something that is a communal thing. It is an emotional thing. It is so important. And I guess it's that possibility that this meal that means so much to me, simple though it may be, I might never get it again. I might never have that
Right.
experience again. And
Yeah.
so to answer your question, there's a lot of a lot of different foods.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of dishes. Yeah. And it's like you were saying, it is crazy to kind of talk to the other family members and you're like, do you remember how great like this, biscuits and gravy or, whatever was? And they're like, yeah, that was okay. And in your head, you're like, okay, well, I have to bury you now. Like, I'm, like, how dare you say it's just okay? And then they tell you a different meal and you realize, like, shortly but surely, you're like, oh, yeah, like, everybody's got their own thing that's going to go with that. Like, because, like you were saying, she made people feel special.
Yeah.
And that was their special thing, was that because something had occurred right before it or right after it. And yeah, it just goes that way. And and even you just saying weenie soup, like I am like enthralled right now. Do you know what weenie soup
I don't.
is?
I don't.
See? Now I got to figure it out,
Yeah.
man. I'm not kidding. We've talked about this before. We are major lovers of hot dog, sausage, anything in a casing, random meat. I'm all for it. But like when I was growing up, I think a lot of people knew it by Franken beans, right? But Beanie Weenies.
Oh, yeah.
That was I always grew up with Beanie Weenies. You got your Van Camp or whatever, baked beans. You throw in hot dogs, mustard, ketchup, barbecue sauce, whatever you want, and you cook it up. And by God, those beans and hot dogs fed everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. You'd have leftovers. Like, it fed everybody. So it's like, those are the meals now that I'm like kind of obsessed with because it truly is. It's cheap ingredients that you literally can stretch out, yet in your head, you're like, I don't want to be eating anything else.
Yeah.
Like, this is so good,
Because you're not just eating you're not just eating that dish. You're bringing memories back. Like, they comes about a month or so ago. Our extended family on that side got together to do a Brunswick stew. So my grandfather, before his passing, that was something that he did that was kind of his specialty, was Brunswick stew. One of the recipes I have is a Brunswick stew recipe I found in there that I'm going to frame and put up in my office.
There you go.
But it was something that he would do. But we did this Brunswick stew to bring the family together, just to kind of remember the both of them. It was and it's just one of those things. Like, Brunswick stew is chicken or pork, vegetables, a little bit of seasoning. That's it. It's nothing crazy or special,
Right.
but you're eating it with your family, with all that lineage behind it, and it's just I couldn't ask for a better meal that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's like you feel like literally you have a familial ownership over it, right?
Yeah.
Like all of you collectively are like, yeah, we did good. Like, that it's like you guys have this thing of like, yeah, we always do this and we do it better than anybody else and it can't be replaced. Like, you can't hack it. It's this. Like, it is this thing. And yeah, man, and you were talking about like, the moments that kind of like break your heart, you hear that she's not remembering it and things. I agree with you. Like I said, I had my grandfather, he had, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever it may be. And I think the thing that I always thought about in those moments is like, and I think there's a lot of moments in life where people get this way, but it's very strange to feel it when they're literally not in pain or like in a hospital or it's a separate thing. Cause kind of like what you're saying, it's like there's something wrong, but it's not something that's like completely fixable. Like if somebody's having a stroke, you call emergency services, you do whatever you got to do. Those kinds of moments, you literally are in your head and you're like, something's wrong, and there is not a single line of thinking that I can come up with to fix this.
Yeah.
Like, I can't say a certain phrase and that'll hook them back in to like go with whatever's going on. And so what happens to me, especially during those times, you realize how fragile like your brain, life, moments, memory, just how fragile all that is.
Yeah.
And you obviously everybody's like, oh yeah, you take it for granted and you go through that, but it's like kind of like what you're saying. You think about the person that's experiencing it, and it truly is like this, like she was obviously looking back at your aunt and realizing that she's like, oh, I don't remember this.
Yeah.
Like, Dad, like what? And so they're thinking that same thing. It's just quiet, right? And so it is. It's very heartbreaking. It just makes you feel, yeah, just like you're just lost at a certain point. And that was the thing that, oh man, I like I said, I took care of my grandpa for a summer. My grandma had to get her knee replaced.
Yeah.
And so I'm taking care of her, and then my grandpa is having his memory issues, and I would have to like verbally argue with him to eat his salad. And it's not because it was a salad. He loves salad. He literally thought, oh, I've already eaten, or oh, I'm not hungry. I don't need to eat that. And it's like, no, seriously, you haven't eaten since like 6 a.m. this morning. You need to eat this salad because it's like 2 p.m., and I'm going to be making dinner here in not too long. And I've been arguing with you for an hour and a half to eat this salad. Well, I already ate. No, you didn't. Like, you're like, and it's one of those things where like you go back and forth with those things, and yeah, fragility. That's like the word that strikes me in that is just like one day we all kind of hope to get to an age where somebody else actually has to take care of us, kind of like when we were a child, and somebody takes care of you, and you realize that, you instead of looking at someone older and having that feeling of connectivity and bonding, you now are looking at a completely different generation and a different, like, age of people, and you're still just as bonded and grateful, right? And it truly is like this weird, like literally Disney Lion King life cycle kind of thing. You like, it hits you right in those moments. And yeah, it's fragile.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets to go through that. Not everybody has those things that occur all the time. Some people sadly have really bad grandparents, and they just don't care, and they do whatever. And so, yeah. And when you have an awesome set of grandparents and you have an awesome family and everybody's getting along and going through things, it's like you were saying, the Brunswick stew moments where everybody's around. Yeah. Middle-aged like we are a little bit.
Hey, not quite.
We kind of look around. Not quite. Yeah, we're not there yet, everybody. This is audio
young
medium. I'm young. Oh. That's lit. But yeah, no, but it's one of those things, like you look around and you realize like this was the thing that my dad was yelling at me about. Oh. This was the thing that, like, you were sitting there and your mom and dad are getting stuff ready, putting it in the car, right? Whatever it was, because it's like, no, we got to go to grandma and grandpa's. We got to do this and this and this. Okay. And they're acting stressed out, right? They're like, oh my God, I got to get the kids in the car. I got to get this going. I have to season that, cook this, but I got to make sure that I can store it and then travel with it. And you're thinking in your head, they're just stressed and they hate it. They're going through that excruciating experience because they know how important it is. That importance sits with them because they can acknowledge it, and they want to make it as good as they can. Usually that's like where they're at. Like, I'm sure you've had those moments with your child. Yeah. Like,
it's those moments of, like with my grandparents. I mean, thankfully she got to meet them and she still remembers them, which is amazing, but
that's great.
I remember taking her to visit them early 2020 before the pandemic started, and I did it because we were worried about my grandmother's health then, and she lived another another almost 3 years. She was tough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember, going up there with the knowledge, like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to get to see them. And this might be the only chance that she gets to see them. I don't know. And that's a lot of weight to carry, and there is nothing in the world to prepare you for that.
No.
But you're right though. I mean, the way you just said it, that perspective of, God, I need to apologize to my parents, or at least thank them, I guess, because that weight of, watching. Because I can tell you this, watching my daughter grow up is, on one hand, it is the most amazing thing I have ever gotten to do, and I don't deserve to be that lucky to get to be, because it's not just that I am, it's just that I get to be her father. Right. And she's this amazing little girl, and she's growing up. She's so smart and so just kind and sweet. I get to be her father. I get to watch her grow up, but also I have to watch her grow up. And watching her grow up is the single most heartbreaking thing I've ever experienced, at the same time that it's the most beautiful thing. Because it is not fair that 7 years ago she was a little baby I could hold in one arm, and that now she was reading to me in Spanish tonight because she's learning a second language. So the idea that I'm having to watch her grow up, and at the same time I'm having to watch my parents get older, is bullshit, and it sucks.
Yeah, it does. It is rough. Yeah. And that's the thing, is it's like that. It's that symbolism of rough in the terms of, like, you understand the humanity behind that. There's tons of people that have to do that, and there's, and you're realizing, like, yeah, man, being a human, this is hard. Yeah. Like, this is not for the weak. Yeah. Right?
Not
like,
at all.
It is. And so it's like you were saying, and that's like the crazy thing to me too, is like you were saying, your daughter's learning Spanish and English, and all I can think in my head is like, is your daughter AI? Like, is it like, like, I'm like thinking in my head, like, man, I couldn't, like, like, literally, that's the thing that I find, like, there is always one song in my head anyways that I'm trying to think of the wording really, but what it is it's What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Right? And he says, like, what is it? Something green, skies of blue, red roses too. I'll watch them grow for me and you. And whenever I hear that part, I get like a little choked up. I get a little raspy, and I'm like, oh man. And it's because it's like you realize that it's like this humanity thing. It is special. Yeah. It is like this crazy good experience, and like it just becomes this whole thing of like, you look at your kid and you look at the flowers growing or something changing over time, and you realize that it's like, I mean, I had my hand in it to like try to make things better, but they are making it better. And like, man.
And let me say too, because I don't want to sound ungrateful for what I said a moment ago. I mean, I am privileged that I am in a situation where I get to watch her grow up and still have my parents and watch them get older. So I don't want to sound callous when I say that, because there are some people that would give anything and everything for either one of those.
Right.
But man, it's
the acknowledgement of the different difficulties, right? When you can't see it, it's really rough. Yeah. It's hard. But having to experience it, or going through that experience,
it'll get you.
It has a different type of difficulty, where it's like, because there are those that can't. Yeah. And it's like, that whole thing of like, what is it? You feel slightly guilty gloating about something, right? It's that kind of thing where, you just want a championship of some kind, but on the other side of whatever thing you were playing, there's somebody who lost. And you're like, I'm glad to be on the other side, but I can sympathize or empathize with where they're at as well. And that's like the complication of the human condition, you know? It's an up and down roller coaster where one day you're getting your butt swatted by a yellow shovel, and then the next minute you're looking at your daughter doing Spanish, and you're like, how did those two things show up in the same like set of minutes?
Yeah.
How did this happen? You know? And it's because of Ruby Justice.
Yeah.
Ruby Justice showed up, and she was like, I'm going to set this up. This is going to be the thing. Like, I'm going to do this. And so, yeah, it sounds like there were a lot of great recipes there. Yeah. And it's like you mentioned, the cookbooks. Yeah, your daughter's going to be able to look in that, and, like, you can tell the little markings and the little, like, notes and things like that. It's like you're getting a glimpse of not only their thought process, but, like, exactly what they thought they were going to change or tweak or make better, or like to remember, like, oh, that's the important part. And it's kind of like this thing where you realize, like, it's part of that coming of age thing where you realize that, like, your parents, your grandparents, other family members, they're not perfect.
They're just real people.
Like, right. They're real people. Like, they had to make those notes and remember this stuff. Like, you know.
And it's cool too. Like, 'cause she, you know, there's a lot of similarities we have, because if I saw something called ham and cheese sliders, I would have been like, I would have made a note too that I want to try this. So it's cool to know that my grandmother saw that, and she's like,
right.
Either she knew that she'd like it,
tomato
or
soup.
Somebody else would.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the thing that, like, now, right, I'm trying to, like, I make stuff all the time, and since it's cooking, you can kind of wing it, right? It's not baking. Baking, you gotta be exact. No. But cooking, you can kind of wing it. And yeah, I'm turning into my grandma and my mom and all that, where I'm like, my wife will be like, listen, you know, you're not going to be healthy every single day. So, like, how do you cook this or this or this? Because one, I've got to eat, and two, you have to eat. So, like, how do I make this? And there's, like, certain things that I'm like, yeah, you should probably get, like, this brand. Use the whole bottle. Use, you know, whatever. And then there's other things where I'm like, yeah, you just put your hand in it and you toss it in there.
Put it in there until it looks right.
Yeah, yeah. I could speak French, and it would be the same equivalent. She wouldn't understand it either way. I'm like, and she'd just be like, I still don't know what you're saying. And I'm like,
how much clearer could I make this?
Yeah. Por mes. And I just try, you know, it's like, that's the whole thing. It's like, there is a certain, like, it's an experienced, like, artistic piece of it. Like, oh, you want it to taste like this certain acidity, then you're probably going to have to do it exactly the way I do it, which I don't think you're going to want to do because you think it's complicated. Like, you know, and that's the thing. It like you were saying, when it's, like, made by different people, that everybody's like, oh, you can't make it like so-and-so made it. And that is, like, a true fact. Yeah. Like, it is hard to replicate other people's exact recipes, especially when they've made it hundreds of times. Oh, man. Yeah, that's difficult.
Like I said, I can learn to make fried cornbread. I can probably make pretty good fried cornbread. I'll never make anything that stacks up to hers, though. And that's...
Yeah. Well, I mean...
To me.
Part of that is you're a... Right. Well, part of that is you're a failure. But the other part of it... I'm kidding, everybody. I'm kidding. But no, I mean, you're right, though. Like, you could literally watch a video of her making it, and then you do it the exact way. And when it comes out, you and everybody who ate that food before is like, yeah, it's not the same, man. Like, it's off. Something's off.
I cook for my daughter now, and I have some things that I make that she loves. And I've thought about this before. Yeah. I'm making her stuff that she will one day probably make for her children. And say, you know, my dad used to make this for me, and she's going to eat it, and it's not going to be quite the same. She'll call me in 20 years, 30 years, and say, Dad, how did you make this? Because I can't get it just right. Like, I just threw some stuff in the bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? This is kind of an interesting thing too, is you have to have those kinds of things because let's be honest, it is way harder and like not as complicated to just know the order.
Yeah.
And when I say that, it's like, oh yeah, my dad, he used to always take me to get a Kirkland hot dog. And it's like, okay, like they're good. I love them. But I wouldn't put that as the thing my dad made all the time, right? That's why you got to cook at home, people. Don't always order out. Don't always, what you gotta go and do that kind of stuff because it's like, oh yeah, my mom, she always knew the best way to tell the Domino's guy like how to order the pizza and like how to do half and half.
She would get light sauce, and I can never express to them just how light to get the sauce.
Right. Yeah, I never get that type of light sauce ever again. I hit it in the app, but it's just not the same. And, she used to always say in like a really like harsh yet demanding tone, no sausage. I don't know. It hit different, it hit different. And it's like, those are so sad of like memories. Yeah. Like that would be like, oh God. Like, why is that the only thing you remember?
Yeah. Not everything has to be made from scratch, homemade, but
no.
Yeah. The meal itself is important, but I do think the act of cooking is special. I really fully believe that. And
totally.
It's like I enjoy, you and I are similar in this vein. I enjoy it anyway, but just the act of like making something is that's special. I just there's no other way to put it.
Totally. And especially if like any major historical type of things, it is crazy to think like, Dwight D. Eisenhower, the guy who did, Operation Overlord and controlled the army during the World War II and all that stuff. Yeah, his favorite meal was something gelatinized.
Oh, God.
Like, there's stuff like that. Like, Richard Nixon put ketchup in his cottage cheese, and that was one of his favorite things. Like, there's a certain thing where it's like, you are literally better than some of your elders because you're eating better than they did. That's what's crazy to me.
Richard Nixon,
like
second worst thing he ever did was Watergate.
Right. Yeah. The first one was definitely the cottage cheese. Like, how dare you? That, my God. Yeah, it's just, but it's like, it's one of those things where, like, literally, you go back, and it's crazy to think. I've got very, very distant Osage relative, and everybody, it's like Killer of the Flower Moon's out, and all that stuff is going on. And I saw the movie. Great movie. The Wishaze people. So Osage, they had their traditions, their things that they did, and it's like a lot of it is deer and buffalo and different things because they were nomadic, but they did a lot of agricultural. There was a lot of that in there. But at the same time, there's like this thought in my head of like how that got passed down over time. And it is crazy to think that like you could grab a forefather of yours at any point and you could have them try what your comfort food is. And they would realize like it's a million times better than what they were eating. Yeah. Like, they're like, well, I love buffalo and I know how to cook it perfectly, but it does not taste like a ribeye. Like, wow. Like, dang. Like, that's crazy. And it's like, like we slowly over time figured all these things. It's,
Or just imagine too, somebody from the past that could come to this time and say, you're still eating this. Like, it's a way to keep these things alive. I mean, I don't want to get too lofty or too heady about it, because I realize my place in the universe, and I don't think that highly of myself, but I really do feel like it is a way that we stay in touch with everybody before us and that we keep them connected to everybody after us. It's not the only way, but I think it's an important way.
Right. It's the sustenance. It's what keeps us alive, and to know that others were living off of some of those same things is kind of like not too much has changed. Like, that's kind of the, you're like, I still got to do this and this. And yeah, okay. You're not the grandpa that's like, I went uphill both ways in snow. And I'm like, well, you know what, Grandpa? I'm dealing with flash floods and tornadoes. So, yeah, I'll take your snow hills. Jeez. And then, then Grandpa's like, oh, no. I made the planet worse. And it's like, that's a different discussion, Grandpa. Completely different discussion.
I never thought I'd say this, but one day I am going to break out. I had to go walk to school 15 miles uphill, in climate change both ways.
Yeah, climate change both ways. It was really hot. I had to find a place with air conditioning. It was tough. And it was actively making that situation worse. Like, that's how it goes. It's, But no, I mean, that's the other thing, too, though, is it's kind of interesting to know that the things that your grandma, Ruby, was passing down, whether it was the activities of doing puzzles or, whipping your brother, like, it didn't matter. Those kinds of things were like, okay, here's these events, but the food stuck with everybody in some way, shape, or form. And it was different meals, and it was everything like that. It's, weenie soup and, cornbread. Ugh, man.
Yeah.
It's the good stuff. It's the good stuff.
I'm going to go to bed hungry tonight.
I know. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I made spaghetti red. That's what I call it, because there's no meat in it, right? It's just red sauce spaghetti. I make it pretty good. I made the sauce a little sweeter than I usually do, and so it didn't hit quite as right. I tried to add more Parmesan to cover it up, and then I was like, oh, that's too cheesy. Then I tried to make a smoothie bowl. Wouldn't you know it, blackberries have seeds. So I'm trying to eat this thing, and the seeds are coming through. What was I doing? Like, what was I thinking today? I'm like, oh, let's make sauce too sweet. Oh, let's mix it with berries and then seeds in it. And I'm like, man, what were you doing? And it's like, oh, yeah, just trying to eat. I was just trying to make something.
Look, they're not all going to be winners, though. That's the thing.
No. Yeah, that's something you learn pretty quick. Like, baseball is a failure sport. It really is. If you succeed 3 out of 10 times, Hall of Fame. You're great. So cooking, it's like a 8 or 9 out of 10. If you succeed 8 or 9 out of 10 times, you got a pretty good record. You're a pretty good cook. You're doing what you need to do. But seriously, make it like 9.8 or 9.9 for the love of God. Like, please, you're going to make your family so upset if you're still at the 6 or 7 range. That's not good. Yeah. Not good. You need better numbers, kid. That's the way that works. Yeah. Oh, man. But I appreciate you talking about your grandma and going over those things. It's, everybody's got a connection to what we can eat, what we can have, and how those are tied to memory. It's great to hear those things, especially the family moments of, breaking shovels, and that's always good too. The humor bit is always kind of the thing that you're like, yeah, I like to laugh while I'm eating. I don't want to choke, but I'll laugh while I'm eating. It'll be good.
The thing about the show is the episodes are never as sad as they could be. There's always some laughs that are had,
Yeah.
But Devin, I just want to say I appreciate you doing this and jumping on that side of the mic to interview me about my grandmother, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I feel lucky to be on this other side. Like I said, I wish I had stolen the whole thing anyway. And so getting in this seat, something feels right about it, It just, I'm like, this could have been my jam, my thing. But like all good things, life could have turned out differently, right? Yeah. Butterfly effect and all that stuff. I could have taken over it, and then chaos ensued, I'm like, the next thing I'm talking to, some a random person that I was already doing that. But I'm just saying, you could be talking to a random person and they do something to ruin your career. And you don't want that to happen.
Nah.
No. So I'm glad you get to maintain the seat once I get off of the microphone position. Yeah.
I appreciate
you get to keep it, obtain it, and keep hosting this great show of Our Last Meal.
Thanks, man.
You know?
Well, hey,
Yeah.
Devin, anything that you want to promote that you're working on or that you want to get anybody aware of?
Yeah, so not working on too much that is fun. I work, like a job, money, whatever. But I do want to say, support your local drag queens or your clubs that have entertainment, music, whatever it may be. Support that locally. Then also support, the cart or the brick and mortar that is local. Conglomerate, big, fast food type of. That's fine. You're in a quick hurry. You got like a 4-year-old that's picky. Like, I get it. But if you've got the choice, go with your local gut. Do that. But look at the carts, especially. I heard one person it was a Facebook group that's nearby, and they try to act like they're food critics. I do too, but it's just one of those things. Like, everybody's got a criticism of whatever. Somebody will ask like, "What's the best teriyaki in town?" And then there's like 18 things listed. But of course, for me, I was like, oh yeah, one of these food carts. If I'm going to that food cart pod, they're a contender.
Yeah.
Like, I might go to them, a couple times a year or whatever. And inevitably, there's somebody on that Facebook group that's just like, I am so tired of going to these food carts and paying way too much money for oily food and a styrofoam thing. And it's like, one, we're in Oregon here, okay? It's not styrofoam.
Yeah.
It is definitely some type of version of cardboard. That's illegal. So please stop that. Two, I love that place.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you? Like,
Also,
man.
if you don't like
and
it,
so,
just don't go.
Right. Yeah. And my whole thing is like, Facebook's already got a ton of negativity.
Yeah.
Why are you spreading more on this page? We all just want to enjoy the food places that are around us,
I'll never understand that. Let people like what they like.
I don't either. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I noticed too? If you take pictures of where you're eating locally and then you post those pictures on Google Photos or Yelp, and it goes into this Rolodex of whatever, it helps people actually pick local restaurants more.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So be that awful Instagram person where you're like hovering over the plate and you're taking a photo, as long as you post it. If you don't post it, that restaurant's not going to benefit from it. You just look like an idiot. But if you actively post it, you're doing your job. You're doing great.
Get it on Google. Get it on Yelp.
Get it on Google. Do that. And everybody keep an eye out for something from Mouthful Productions, I think.
Yeah. Devin, I appreciate you coming on and getting us through this.
All right. I appreciate you talking and going through it all. The rough times, the good times, the in-between times. We're all there.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. We will see everybody later.
Thank you again for listening to Our Last Meal. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Just full transparency, it feels weird to be on the other side of the mic for that one. But I want to thank Devin again for stepping up. I don't think when he agreed to reach out to me a while back and be on the show and all that, I don't think he knew what he was getting in for by having me then ask him to talk to me about my grandmother. But I am so appreciative that he is the kind of person that would do that. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you will continue to enjoy it. All the normal stuff, please rate, review. Anything helps. Recommend this to people you know, people you care about. Maybe someone you don't care about. Maybe they'll get something out of it. But yeah, I'm gonna have more episodes coming out soon. It's nice to be back in the swing of things. I'm really excited to just keep putting out the show. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is a labor of love. I do this to try to encourage open and honest conversations around grief. So I hope everyone gets something from it. I certainly get something from doing it. So until next time, take care.